Welcome to the Studio Talk podcast. I'm Xiomara Sosa, your co-host. Every week, we speak to our community members to teach them about mental health through education and awareness, and our hope is to inspire them through social change advocacy. We also interview community members and other mental health professionals, clinicians, healers, students, and wellness professionals. Our style is storytelling. Everyone has a mental health story to tell. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute for seeking help from a licensed mental health professional and is not a substitute for psychological diagnosis or treatment. It's purely educational and purely social change advocacy. If you find yourself in any sort of mental health emergency or distress, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room. Welcome everyone to the X Podcast, Real Conversations about Mental Health. This is episode 38, and today's topic is holistic mental health and holistic health. We're going to kind of like interchangeably discuss both of them because some people they're like cousins to hang out together, right? So there's a lot of things that are that they have in common, and then a few things that kind of separate them, but not much. So we'll talk about that. So I am your host, clinical mental health counselor, Xiomara Sosa. I am a holistic and integrative women's mental health therapist and clinical director at my own private practice. I'm a national board certified counselor, a licensed professional counselor, and a clinical supervisor in South Carolina. I also run my nonprofit mental health co-op for mental health clinicians that are starting out. As a social scientist and a social change advocate, I strive to have real conversations about all things related to mental health here in the podcast. Right, J-Rock?
That's right.
Mm-hmm. So today I am joined with a lovely co-host, J-Rock, and we also have a very special guest. It's my first very special guest. Her name is Tina Clarke, and I am going to allow Tina to introduce herself in a minute. J-Rock is going to introduce himself, and if any other clinicians or guests show up, we will let them just join the conversation because we're casual here, right?
There we go. Very casual.
All right, J-Rock, who are you?
All right. Well, I am J-Rock. I am a local radio personality here in Charleston, South Carolina. I've been doing that for close to about 20 years and love all things broadcasting, audio file, all of that nerd stuff. And also, too, I'm just a big advocate of self-help and just being a part of the podcast. I'm learning a lot of things, and a lot of things I had to unlearn, mainly unlearn. I had to unlearn like a good bit of stuff. So I'm just the, regular Joe, just like, hey, I'm just here to digest information and, just learn stuff all the time I'm on here. So yeah, it's always fun.
Thank you. And so now we're going to have Tina talk a little bit about herself. And I just want to preface that by saying that, there's a book we're going to talk about. It's called Holistic Mental Health Volume 2, in which she wrote a very, very just amazing chapter on, and it's one of the issues that I deal with the ladies that I see in my private practice, which a lot of people don't talk about because they don't know that it's actually part of the DSM, but it's actually also not part of the DSM, right? So we're going to get into that. So go ahead, Tina. Who are you?
Hey, everyone. I'm Tina Clarke, and I have a holistic wellness business called Stargazing Angel in the Charleston, South Carolina area. And I mainly focus on Reiki, energy healing, and shamanic healing. But a lot of my clients come with mental health, emotional health, physical health challenges. And so when I look at a client, I look at everything that's going on with them, not just one part.
Yeah, and that's really, I love it. And so Tina reached out to me via Facebook because we've been Facebook friends forever, and we've never actually met, right, Tina? But we know each other because that's the world we live in right now. But anyway, I've been following her and all of the things that she does, and I know she's just aware of me. And then one day she reached out to let me know that she would love to be part of the podcast because she wrote this chapter in this book I just mentioned. And so I read the chapter. I haven't read all of the stories in the book, and I intend to, but I wanted to make sure that I read yours twice. I know what I wanted to ask and everything. And it's a personal story. It's a very personal story that she's going to share with us in her own words. And I just was able to relate to it a lot because although I didn't go through that, a lot of my clients have and do. And it's fascinating that because I take the integrative sort of holistic approach to mental health, most of the times I will go ahead and have them go meet with their other practitioners to kind of rule out other things that are going on that they think they don't even understand might be the reason why they think it's mental health, but it's just presenting itself as mental health issues, like depression is one of them. And sometimes there's a deficiency in one of their vitamins and supplements. Sometimes it's just has nothing to do with their psychological health. It's something that has to do with medication that they've been taking that they shouldn't be taking anymore. And now they have these symptoms and, very interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and pass the baton to you. And then you take it from there, Tina.
Okay, well, my chapter was about my struggle with PMDD, it's premenstrual syndrome. It's like extreme PMS.
Mm-hmm.
So back in my late 30s, I had my second child. We decided we didn't want to have any more children. So I got off the birth control pill. Mm-hmm. Now, growing up, we're told birth control pill is safe. Mm-hmm. And when I went off it, I think my hormones kind of went haywire. Mm-hmm. And one of the ways it manifested was once a month, right before my period, I would want to literally go into a cave and disappear. Mm-hmm. And that's problematic when you have a husband and young children that need you and, or want their hugs and affection, and you don't even want to give that to them.
Yeah. So I just want to interject for 1 second, because when people hear these terms, they're not, the internet, Dr. Internet, right? So everybody thinks they know what's what.
Yeah.
So just to clarify what PMDD is, this stands for premenstrual dysphoric disorder, PMDD. It is in our DSM-5, which is what we diagnose people with. So it's an actual clinical, quote unquote, it presents in a very clinical form to us when it shows up. And Tina mentioned it's a severe form of PMS, but it really even goes beyond that, as you talked about very, very clearly in your chapter, because it's cognitive, it's psychological, it's physical, it's emotional, it's all kinds of things, and it's the extreme. And it falls under the category of depressive disorders, which is what I specialize in my practice, and PMDD is one of the depressive disorders that I manage. And what I love about your story is how I've been shouting to the world, and you just validated that sometimes we need to look at this from a different perspective and understand what the woman's, because what you mentioned about the pill, J-Rock, which you might not know about, it's been the standard norm for women. And now what holistic psychiatrists in particular right now are starting to study, and they have the science on, is how that has disrupted the hormones for women, how it has their gut health is completely destroyed by it. A lot, not everybody, but there are all of these things that it does, good things that it does, right, for women. But then also there are these things that they didn't predict, they didn't expect would happen. And then your story is one of the things that happen when they try to get off of the pill after so many years.
Okay.
And it could be physical side effects that we don't even know about, and it can be emotional, psychological ones. So I just wanted to kind of give a little background on that. So go ahead, Tina.
Yeah, unfortunately, I was really excited to get off the pill.
Yeah.
But then I had all these issues. And so at the time, I had really awakened to my spirituality. I've always been very spiritual, but I was taking different classes and finding different teachers. And there was a medium, this was up in Virginia, I took a class by her. And she went around the room and she's like, "What are you struggling with the most?" And I said, "I'm struggling with PMDD, and I want to run away into a cave, and I feel bad about it. I feel guilty about it. I don't want to feel that way."
Yeah.
And then so she asked me to go back into my childhood. She's like, how do you feel? Describe it. And I said, I just want people to leave me alone. And then she said, "Well, go back in your childhood. When was the first time you felt that way?"
And that memory came, didn't it?
And I was like, oh, okay. So, yeah, I had a difficult mother, and it came back to her, and I wanted her to leave me alone. And then I was ready to release it because I didn't want to feel like this anymore.
Right.
So then she guided the whole group through what I call the golden ball meditation, which I still use to this day with myself and my clients.
Good.
And so what we do is we let go of whatever doesn't serve us. And for me, it was the PMDD. You allow that or visualize that to flow into a golden ball of light that's in front of you. And then you allow a beautiful light being to come in and take the golden ball of light. So it could be anybody. For me, it was Archangel Gabriel.
Right.
Because that's one of my major guides. So he came in and he actually swatted it out like a bat, with a bat.
Kick that shit out of here.
Right.
Get it out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he did that. And when we came back, I felt like a different person.
So you use a really good word that it just always sticks to me when people use the word release, right? Because whether you're releasing it from a spiritual perspective or you're releasing it from a meditative perspective or an angelic perspective, or you're releasing it from a psychological perspective or even a physical perspective, because there's science out there that shows when you do the, I forget what it's called, but like that whole body relaxation where you take it from the top to the bottom and the top, and you feel your body letting go of all the trauma and all the pain and all the hurt that you're feeling in your bones and you're feeling in your, and I don't know, well, we had this discussion with you and, and massage, that's not your thing. But in theory, that's what happens. So I love the term release because I think that at the end of the day, one of the beautiful things in the holistic world is that there isn't one size fits all. And what might work for those of us in the Western world might not be the thing that's going to work for somebody on the other side of the world. What might work for someone who's a spiritual person that has beliefs that are different than ours might not work for someone who is a pragmatic black and white sort of left or right thinker, and they need to have something that they're going to do that's going to make them feel a certain kind of way. And the idea is to work with the person in the way that's going to help them release the thing that's bringing them pain. Because what it sounds like, from what I read in your chapter, there was a lot of pain and suffering in your life. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like after your second baby. So if you don't mind me saying, is it okay if I talk about your cesarean?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So she talks about having had 2 cesareans. And one of the things that, one cesarean. Okay. 1 cesarean. And the thing about, you know, how everybody just sort of dismisses that, right? Oh, she had a cesarean, it's no big deal. But this is like one of the most intrusive things that can happen to a woman's body. It is so traumatic. It is really painful. It is so difficult to even watch happen. My mom had 4, and she lost a set of twins at one of them. And I just don't even know. Like, I don't know how a person survives that. And in those days, you know, it was a lot different. So with that, I feel, comes trauma to your body. Like, there's no way that women, you have trauma to your body when you give birth anyway, right? But then when you have the cutting into and the everything else that goes along with the cesarean, there's trauma, that's just more trauma, right, that you're dealing with, and more pain and more discomfort that you're dealing with. And so even the recovery from that sort of gets diminished in a way. Like, it just sort of gets downplayed, I think. So did that play a role in addition to you not having to take the pill anymore?
Well, this is a good story.
Okay. We like stories here. We're storytellers.
The first baby was surprise breech.
Oh.
So her butt was where her head was supposed
Oh, no.
to be. So I had 4 midwives that checked my stomach all throughout my pregnancy, and they all said that she was head down. They were wrong.
Oh, wow.
It was the first time that it happened in the practice, too.
Wow.
Because they were like, this has never happened to us before. So obviously you go into a hospital, I'm already like 10 centimeters dilated when I walked in because I waited a little too long. And, you know, my midwife feels a butt, not a head, so I had to have the C-section. So by the way, I had been home laboring with no drugs.
Oh, no. Wow.
Okay, so because that's the kind of birth I wanted to have.
Yeah.
But then, you know, I had to have a C-section, so I had the spinal tap and everything. But with my second, I had a VBAC.
I don't know what that is.
which is vaginal birth after
Oh,
cesarean.
okay. Gotcha.
So my midwife and I were high-fiving each other in the hospital after that.
Wow. So what made you, so this was a decision that you made with your husband about no longer being on the pill once you have your second child. And so what were your expectations when you made that decision? And then what really happened?
I did not expect to have the hormonal upheaval
Yeah.
that I experienced. So, and I was just glad because I had been on the pill since 19.
Wow.
From 19 to 36, that's a long time. And but then I also had the digestive issues. Yeah, so it's been a long time, and even now I'm 51. And, we're losing our hormones
Yeah.
at this age.
Yeah.
And you realize how much hormones dictate everything in your life.
Yeah.
Like, you're really not in charge. It's your hormones that are in charge.
So true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. It really is. And it's in charge of your physical health, your mental health, everything, all of it.
Yeah.
So I think, so many of these stories I hear from women just all over, they have these stories that they're telling. And what I think is fascinating is the different things that help the different women kind of recover from it, right? And your story is really unique. And I'm sure that there's many women in the world, and that is the way that they overcame it, or just even got to where you are right now, where you're symptom free now, right?
Oh,
Or do you say, you're
I mean,
like good?
It completely went away.
Yeah.
Like I said, I felt like a different person after
Yeah.
that. And I was so grateful to my teacher. And then years later, I wrote the chapter in the book, and I asked her permission to use the meditation on my website. And she didn't even remember it.
Oh, wow. But it works.
I was like, okay. I don't remember, but go ahead and use it.
That's hysterical. That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So then I'm gonna talk a little bit, and we're gonna get back to our whole connection to the mental health part of this is how holistic mental health is kind of like becoming mainstream now. Would you think? Like it's starting to be?
It needs to be, because what they've been doing up until now has not been effective. And we are not just a bodysuit, a suit, we're not just a physical body. And so I think the beauty of the story is, and I think anybody could do this, is if you just ask yourself questions. If I'm feeling this way, when was the first time I felt this way? Go back to that. And then if you're ready to release it, you can say, I release it. I no longer want to carry this. You could do the meditation. It's available on my website. So, however you do it. But once you realize what it is, that's the biggest step to healing.
Just the whole self-awareness. Yeah.
Yes.
Self-awareness is a big one. So I neglected to say the name of the book, didn't I?
Oh,
I don't know. I think I may have.
You did.
I think you
Did I say Holistic Mental Health Volume 2? Okay. So I am going to have it in the show notes, and I'm going to have Tina's websites. And now she just told me that she started a podcast. So we're going to put that on there, and we're going to put all that information on there so that you guys can go in there and read her story, read everybody else's story too, because this book has a lot of stories in there. I haven't even gotten to them. But I like that it's different stories, and it all goes back to the holistic part of the health issue, whether it's mental health or physical health. From my perspective, mental health used to be this thing. When I first started way back when, I remember that I used to have I always have done social change advocacy. And one of the things that I wanted to do when I was in my master's program, trying to get, my degree so I can do direct services, right? I just had this big vision about mental health and physical health are the same. They go together. You can't have one without the other. You have to understand how you can't like live one without the other. And if you do, what kind of life is that, right? So it's just, I just always had this vision. And I remember being the oddball out. Nobody wanted to hear it. I was like, oh, please, this is all evidence-based stuff. This is all science stuff. We've been doing this way forever. If you're going to get into this field, you have to understand that there's, and of course I went and I chugged along because I'm all about the science and the evidence-based big time, right? But I also think that there's more to that. like there, sometimes it's not that, So I had this one nonprofit, I think it was called Get Right. And it was all about physical health and mental health with children, particularly with children, to teach them as children to be mindful of both. So you know how J-Rock does? J-Rock does a lot of working out and exercise and all that. And that's his meditative me time. This is how he heals. This is how he gets into his own space and, and does just gets it all out. And there's something very true about being able to do that. So I always figured, if you're teaching people from a young age to be mindful of their bodies, to understand why their central, now of course we're calling it your central nervous system is getting all dysregulated, big fancy science word. But that's what you're saying. Like, when did this start happening? When did you feel bad?
Right.
Oh, you mean when did my central nervous system get dysregulated? And really, what are you asking me? When did you start feeling like shit? It really is. So sometimes there's a physical reason for it. Like there's a car accident. You see a shooting. You're in school and there's a shooting. Yeah. Sometimes it's an emotional interaction that you had with somebody. Your grandma passing away or having a tumultuous relationship with someone as a young child. Whatever it is. It has affected you, right? So I always just say there was a connection, and I just got lots of pushback from that. So it's really lovely now to see that whole thing has changed even within my profession, where you have more and more mental health clinicians who are incredibly passionate and studious on the science part of it. But there's also science to why yoga is healing, right? There's science to why meditation works. There's science to Reiki. There's a reason it's been around for a good 1,000 years, right? There's a reason why the other side of the world use these things for healing. It's just the healing is what it is. So I love that people like you, Tina, and I mean, I sort of like bulldoze my way into it, but Tina is very gentle about it. She's very gentle about it. That these are things that we need to take seriously. We need to pay attention, and we need to start doing it with people from a young age. And then we have the other side of it, which is we don't want people to suffer, and we certainly, like the birth control pill is the one that we're talking about with the whole what happened with your hormones and all that. We don't want to tell people not to take their pills. We don't want people not to be on the pills. We just want to know that there's an alternative that doesn't cause havoc in women's bodies the way that we are now starting to learn that it does. And it has real physical problems that come from it. And it has real psychological problems. Like there's just the hormones, like you said, will just, and progesterone, right? And estrogen. Yeah. And it's a delicate balance that our body has. And we mess with it. We do. We mess with it. And I'm not here judging anybody who's on the pill or not, because I think that those are personal choices for every woman, and it has its purpose. But I think that what I'm liking that I'm seeing now more is that the people on the professional side are starting to understand the repercussions of that. And so they're putting the science into how do we manage this? How do we manage if this happens, if that's how can we prevent it? And maybe have alternatives, and just have discussions about it. And I love that now psychiatrists are holistic, medical doctors are getting holistic, mental health people like me, are being holistic. And then there's the healers and the spiritual people like you that are helping us understand what we don't understand. But we have a clue, right? Because we see it. It presents, people present in our offices with things that sometimes we don't have the answers to. You're one of them.
Like you and then you ask a lot of questions. When my clients come in, when they have a physical issue, say like shoulder pain, and I start asking them, what was happening in your life when the shoulder pain showed up? What were you feeling? Did anything traumatic happen? Did anything big happen in your life? And usually that's something happened in their life that created that. And that's why we have to do a lot of digging.
Yeah. And I mean, if it isn't something like obvious physical trauma that they were in a motorcycle accident or something, or in a car crash, right? And that's not the thing that's going on.
Right.
But they're still presenting with this sort of pain. It's somatic, right? It's something that the body is showing. So those questions make sense. And then you have to go down. I think that you have to be aware enough to know what you don't know, right? And be willing to understand that there are things that you don't know, no matter how many CEUs I get in this profession. There's always going to be those continuing education units that we have to get for the rest of our fucking lives. Like, just for the rest of my life, be educating myself in order to keep a license and to practice. But doctors do it too. And so no matter how much you get, there's always something that you don't know that you don't know.
Right,
so, so I do want to kind of just get into the PMDD part, because I do have to do my due diligence as a clinician, to just kind of give the definition that's in the DSM-5, just to give it. But this isn't to say that this is the only way of understanding what PMDD is and all of that. It's just from a mental health clinician's world. This is what we see when they come in, right? So the DSM-5, under the depressive disorders, they have premenstrual dysphoric disorder, PMDD. It's a much more severe form of premenstrual syndrome, which is the PMS. And we all know women with that, right? I have to say, I was privileged and I never had those. I never had that.
Really?
Yeah, I never. Okay. I don't know why, but I was privileged. But I've seen and have had family members who just were just disabled by it. They just would get their period and they couldn't move out of bed.
Do you want to hear another antidote to PMS?
Yeah. Yeah,
which I've used on myself.
Yeah.
So I always try things on myself
first. Yeah.
So get in alignment with the moon.
Yeah.
And your viewpoint toward your cycle really affects your cycle. So instead of complaining about it, dreading it, being upset it's here, just accept it that as a female, you have a cycle and embrace it along with the moon cycle.
So how would me knowing nothing about the moon cycle other than it exists and is really beautiful and people's mood changes during the moon cycle, that's all I know about it.
Yeah.
How would me, if I feel the PMS coming on, how would I know, like, would I have to reach out to a person like you that understands these cycles? Or is this just something that intuitively I would be able to figure out?
I think it really helps to just embrace your cycle as something beautiful, that it's part of being a woman, part of being a mother or a potential mother. Because the more we resist and push against things and have that negative viewpoint and negative thoughts about it, makes it worse.
So you think a lot of it is, I don't want to say psychosomatic because I'm in the psych field, but do you think a lot of it is like the fucking PMS is coming, so I'm supposed to feel bad, and then I make myself feel bad?
I know that I had some heavy periods, I had some painful ones, and you end up dreading it. It's every month.
Yeah.
Every month. And it could be a week or more. And so if you have that mindset, that emotional part of you that dreads it and is rejecting something that's very natural and a part of you and is not going to go away for a long time, you're going to struggle.
There's a concept in mental health called radical acceptance, and it's part of ACT, which is, part of cognitive behavioral therapy, and this is acceptance therapy. And the VA uses it a lot with veterans, because we all come back with, oh my God, these civilians, they're just blah, and we can't adjust to the civilian world again. And they use this a lot with us to help us understand what radical acceptance means within the mental health field, not, like in layman's terms. But it's a lot like it, that works also in mental health care, to teach a person how to radically accept and what that really looks like. I mean, it sounds like you just sit there and say, okay, I accept you. But there's really a lot more thought that goes into that. There's a lot more practice that goes into that. There's a lot more intention that goes into it. And it really does work, because at the end of the day, it really shows you how to accept what's coming, how to coexist with this in the most peaceful way, how to take in what you can control and do what you need to do with, and then the rest just kind of let it go. And it relieves a lot of that tension, a lot of that stress, a lot of where that pain and suffering comes from. So it's like there's a parallel there, your approach, my approach, or anyone's approach to what it looks like, I think ultimately always comes back to what is it that we can control about what's going on with us that can make it better? Because your mental health clinician isn't going to have the answer all of the time. And some of the answers might not work for you and might work for the 30 other clients that they have, right? And in the spiritual field, in that kind of setting, you have to have the ability to accept things that cannot be explained, the things that mainstream sort of rejects, right? And they'll look at you and go, oh, woo-woo, no, I don't do that. But really, there's a reason it's been around for a really long time. A lot of it is medicinal. Herbal medicine, to me, I think, I don't know why don't even get me going with that. So herbal medicines, right? We'll just talk about that for a second. And this is why the whole integrative approach is very important. So in my case, I do a lot of the population that I work with, for example, the Latino population, depending on where they're coming from, as coming from someone that has Puerto Rican and Dominican background. Back in the day on the island, before there was psychopharmacology, before there was pharmaceuticals and all that, what did they use, Tina? What did they use? They use herbal medicine. like these people, the healers from, the countryside and the ancestors and all this, they had figured out how the earth had natural abilities to heal, because that's what you're saying with the moon, like use the natural cycle of the moon to try to heal. Yeah. And in their case, they would use, like the Taino Indians, they would use, very specific herbs and remedies that came from the earth and tinctures and stuff. And that is what they used for pneumonia and colds and fevers and women giving birth and all kinds of things, until the pharmacy came along and decided, that's just wacko. We're not using that anymore. But what are we coming back to now? Now we're realizing that there is a lot of science behind a lot of those remedies. Some of it you have to be careful, because people are out there trying to scam everybody, on things and trying to sell you anything under the sun.
Yeah.
And, you got to be careful with that. But if you go back in history and you look at what doctors and healers were before they became what we are today, it was almost all of it was natural. Almost all of it was natural, integrative, alternative, medicinal too. Some of it was science. So I love that we're having this conversation. I think that more mental health practitioners should get comfortable having it. But there's pushback, right? There's pushback on that, Tina.
That's okay. You can't stop the wave.
Yeah, you can't stop the wave. And they're coming. And I think it's great. And what's really, really very positive that's happening is once you see the psychiatric profession get into it, and it's the women. The women are becoming holistic psychiatrists. And I listen to their podcasts, and it's amazing because the science is there. They don't fuck around. They don't mess around with their science. They know their science. So, but within the science, they're talking about all of these holistic things that make sense. And one of them is the pills that we've been putting in our bodies and what has happened to the body because of that, and some of the things that women go through. All right. So then we talked about that, the hormonal changes that happen, back to the mental health side of it, because I always have to bring it back to that. That is what the podcast is about. It causes serotonin deficiency. And what is serotonin, right? It's your feel good. It's the chemical in your brain that helps you sort of regulate feeling normal and good and enjoying things. So if you have a disruption in that, whether it's your menstrual cycle or it's the pill or it's whatever it is, it's going to present like a mental health issue, right? So people are going to come to me and say, I am so depressed, and by depression, we mean clinical depression, right? Mm-hmm. And it just is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And when you look back at it and you look at PMDD, like you said, and you go all the way back, you can really find the origin of a lot of that. And so just full disclosure, of course, there's a whole medical side to all of this that we need to say is there, and we need to make sure that people don't not listen to their doctors. Please listen to your doctors. Please listen to, if it's your spiritual, people that you're listening to, we don't want you to stop listening to them. Make sure that you pay attention to your mental health. Don't take what we're saying and suddenly change what you're doing for yourself without making sure that you're doing it with somebody who knows how to do it. So a Tina, a me, or somebody, but don't like just go home and say, I'm just going to throw out my birth control pill and I'm just going to go meditate. Like, don't do that. Okay. Don't do that, because it's more complicated than just doing that. Make sure you have somebody who's credentialed, because Tina's credentialed, and doing these things and helping you go down that journey if that's the journey you're wanting to go down. Right?
Yeah,
J-Rock?
Absolutely.
And J-Rock is like, I never had a period. And
nah, you know what? But I mean, coming from a family made of mostly women, it's kind of like I've been around. I've experienced like sisters, aunts, cousins. Yeah.
So you need to understand this too. Men,
It affects
men
them.
and women.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
It
Yeah.
affects them. So anyway, so serotonin is a substance found naturally in the brain and intestines. And that's the thing that I want to make a point of saying, in the intestines. So again, if you're taking things and it's disrupting your stomach and that whole, it's going to have an effect on how your brain is responding and all that. And that's a whole fascinating part of neuroscience right now. Anyway, it narrows your blood vessels and it can affect your mood and cause physical symptoms, which is kind of like what we keep getting back to. And then there's also the whole area of the experience that you had, like Tina had when you're younger, and how your body ingests that and carries it for the rest of your life, and then how it starts showing up. Something that you talked about in your chapter that was fascinating and I was able to relate to, and nobody ever believes me, is the chiropractor.
Yes.
The chiropractor. So I'll let you tell your story about the chiropractor, and then I'll tell you my story.
So I've always gone to the chiropractor.
Love
but
them.
I had an amazing one, and he told me exactly what my hormonal levels were according to what I shared with him. Later, I worked with a doctor to measure my hormones, and it was the exact levels that he said it was. So he knew what he was talking about.
Yeah, and so what was your first gut reaction when he told you, oh, your hormones, I'm sure this is low in your progesterone side?
What do you know about hormones?
Yeah,
Sorry.
exactly.
You know? But he did. He knew exactly what he was talking about.
They are the most undervalued. I love, my favorite chiropractor is up in this building up there. And because the VA has this program where you can go do community care when they don't have that. And one of the things that they recognized finally was the science behind the chiropractor and yoga and massage and all of those, alternative things, right? So I was the first one to line up. I am going to the chiropractor out there. And he's just great. And one of the things that I would tell him is that I wish people knew more, because he's really into nutrition too, and he understands how nutrition impacts your body, how it impacts your health. And I'm all about how your diet impacts your mental health. I mean, it just does, and there's no way around that, right? And so we were talking about that, and I just loved going to him. But he dealt with a lot of veterans, which what do veterans come back with? A lot of somatic stuff, right? A lot of stuff in their body. They just carry it in their body. That's where they carry it. So he works on that, and that's how he gets it out, and he works on first responders, and that's how he gets it out. But most people look at them like, chiropractor. Yeah, they're just like a glorified massage therapist or something like that. They are not. Those people got their science down. They got their science down. They also got their craft down, and they also know more than... They kind of remind me of the pharmacists, who people don't understand just how much those pharmacists freaking know back there. They know more than your doctor does about so many things, And chiropractors are sort of like those people where the medical community just kind of gave them the side eye or whatever. But they're the ones that pick up on that nonsense on your body.
They focus on their clients holistically.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
And they know it. So if ever, and I can see why it's a little scary, because, people be on your back.
Right, yeah.
It's like, oh no. But man, it's fantastic though, because I can't wait to go back to him. He actually wants to be a guest on the podcast, so that's something maybe we can do together. But if chiropractors are another, they're just part of the whole holistic wellness is what I'm trying to say, and they're underused and they're not understood, and people really need to get past the stigma of them and really understand what it is that they do and why and how, and that it is science-based. It is science-based just like the rest of us are. All right, so then I want to give a general definition of what integrative mental health is, and then we're going to kind of go over what integrative health is in general, and then we can have a lively discussion on that. So, as I said before, I specialize in integrative mental health, and what that basically is a holistic approach to treating mental health that combines the conventional stuff that we learn in school, that's evidence-based, that has been researched, that's known to work, right? But it combines that with the non-conventional stuff that we ourselves haven't studied, but it has proven to be effective in another world, and that would be yoga, massage, meditation, all of the healing worlds, approaches to healing the body, the mind, the soul, the spiritual. And in mental health, I feel like that's very important, because I know for me, a lot of especially women, right? But in general, people will come in presenting with one thing. depression, right? Because that's a big one, or anxiety. And I do a complete assessment on them, on so many things, lifestyle, medical history. When was the last time you had your GYN exam? Oh, I don't know, like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I don't know, whenever I had my last. Okay, so then there's that. And when was the last time you had a wellness check with your primary care doctor? Haven't had that. When was the last time you had your blood drawn? Haven't had that. What's your lifestyle like? Do you sit? Do you walk? Oh, I'm at work all day. I don't eat. I don't drink. Like, so you start to pick up on, right? Tina's nodding her head. And then, so what do you do for self-care? Oh, I have a glass of wine. No, that's not self-care. Self-care is free. It doesn't cost anything. Like, what are you doing to take care of yourself? It is not buying yourself a pair of pants and going and hanging out with your best girlfriend by the pool. What are you doing for self-care? Like you do with your gym, right? And like you do with meditation, and like I do with my alone sitting time and my reading and all that kind of stuff. So most of them don't have that. What's your diet like? Then when I get into that, I'm like, what? It isn't even real food that we're eating, right?
Right.
It's like processed stuff with zero nutrition. So there's all that. So by the time I get done with the assessment, I realize before I even begin to try to say what your mental health issue is, I want you to go get, and I want to know, and if you want me to talk to them, I will, but I want to know where you stand with all of that. And really, where's your spiritual health at? If where is that? What are you doing with your soul and your spirit? Like, what are you doing? What are you feeding it? What are you reading? Are you on Facebook all day long reading stupidness? Are you on TikTok? Or are you really reading, whether it's the scriptures, and if you're not faith-based, then what other spiritual ideas or what other philosophical things, what are you feeding your brain? What are you feeding your spirit? Are you giving something to the communities that need it? Where's your community? Who is your community? How are you? All of this is very holistic, right? Right, Tina? All of it is. And the answers, I guess, to so many of this stuff is, girl, I can barely get out of bed and take my kids to school and come home and feed my cat. What are you talking about? So I'm like, yeah, because that's the life we live in America. And that's not.
Right.
That's not a good life. Like of course, that's why we're all dysfunctional, right? So I do that, and I make them go get screening. And a lot of the times, it's a lifestyle thing. A lot of the time, it's a deficiency in some sort of vitamin or mineral or something that they need for being at the age that they're at, or what their family history is, or anything. A lot of the times, it might be a spiritual issue that's going on with them and it's manifesting in the body. You just don't know until you go and figure it out. So now it's not going to be one of us that's going to have the answer to everything that's going on. It's like you have to eliminate the things before I'm going to diagnose you with, oh, sure, you have major depressive disorder with psychotic features. That's what you have. I'm not going to do that, because how unfair is that when all you need to do is change some things in your life and maybe a lot of these things will go away.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side of that, a lot of this stuff is clinical. A lot of this stuff is physical. A lot of this stuff is medical, and it is serious, and we can do something about that as well. That's what the holistic approach is. Do you see that a lot with people taking that?
Yeah, and I want to give people the benefit, because we're not taught to care for ourselves in the correct manner or do these self-care, but they're out there, and a lot of them are free, and they're very simple. It's like having quiet time, putting relaxing music on, healing music on. You wouldn't believe how effective that is after a few minutes.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Just a few minutes.
Just a few minutes of really high vibrational music, or taking a hot salted bath. I love baths. I'll be in there for 2 hours. My husband's like, you coming out yet? No. I'm in my happy place right now.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. With me, is sense. Anything like the different, that's why aromatherapy works very well for me. And before, nobody believed that, right? They all thought, oh, just the witchy girl over there burning her little candles. But now, of course, the science is there.
Right,
so
right.
Now they know what lavender does, how it affects your brain and your mood and your health. They also understand why eucalyptus helps with with any sort of sinus issues and lung related issues. They all, because it goes back to what I was talking about, my Puerto Rican Taino Indians with their medicinal herbal stuff. This stuff has. So for me, the scents that I have around me make a big difference on whether or not I'm feeling agitated or not, or calming me down, and the lighting, and the sort of what lighting I'm in really helps my.
Yes.
You too? Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes a big difference in sound and all that. So, and like Lisa said, it's free. I don't understand how this business came up around this cottage industry around self-care. Here's 12 things to buy for that. And you don't have to buy a damn thing for self-care. Self-care sometimes is just putting your boundaries up.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
just blocking the person. Like,
There you go.
staying off of social media, right?
Yeah.
Like stop complaining for 3 hours. I don't know.
Oh my God! Yeah. Stop watching the news, y'all.
Oh man.
Oh my gosh.
I
yeah.
haven't in 2-3 weeks, and
Yeah.
I don't at all.
No.
I don't watch the news. I don't know what's
well,
going on.
it isn't even the news anymore. It is
Yeah.
not
Right.
like it's not even journalism anymore.
Yeah.
It's media for the sake of
Fear.
just fear and talking and being ugly and nasty and whatever, and you have to pick a side. It is not journalism anymore.
Right.
So watching any of them,
Yeah.
it's corporate America. And it's ugly people doing. It's crazy. So I follow the historians now because they are the people, in my opinion, who are going to take the lead in proper, storytelling and proper information giving. So there's that. So that is what that is. So basically, integrative mental health takes care of the whole person, like what you were talking about, not just one part of the person. And that's what we're kind of making everyone understand. And some of the treatments, it does include some of them pharmacologic, psychotherapies, psychosocial interventions, acupuncture, which I love, herbal and nutritional medicine, like is what we were talking about earlier, dietary modification, which I'm, meditation and things to that effect. And again, your spiritual health, because I don't know why people kick people's spiritual. Like if you ever meet spiritual people, they are the calmest.
Yeah.
Like Tina. You see Tina? It's like so calm.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
They're so calm and they're so peaceful and they like regulate you naturally. You just get around them.
Or boost you up like a battery.
They do.
Yeah.
I love it.
yeah.
They do. And just the way that they speak, just sort of like, because, I'm all hyper as all hell all the time. And I get around a Tina, long enough. And before you know it, I'm like, oh, man,
Yeah.
Tina, let's have some tea. Like it just calms you down because they are so centered. They're so much more centered
Yeah.
than people are when they aren't spiritual. And spirituality is something different for everybody, right? So whatever that is for you and whatever that is culturally, too, because I do want to be mindful and respectful of the cultural sensitivity. Whoa, did you hear that? That's the baseball people next to us. Sorry about that. So the cultural competence in that, where different cultures have different ideas of what spiritualism is, and we need to be able to accept what those differences are, understand that it's meaningful and it works for them, and as long as it's healthy and makes everybody feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a reason why you're here.
Yeah.
And find out why.
Yeah.
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 Like your purpose. Like I always tell people, have meaning in your life.
Yeah.
Have a purpose in your life other than upping, what is that saying? One-upping the Joneses, like driving
keeping up with the Joneses.
Keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's that. So now we're going to talk about what is holistic health, right? And is there a difference between holistic health and holistic mental health? I don't think there is.
I don't think there is.
I don't think there is either. Some people want to try to kind of separate them a little bit. I don't. So I'm going to read the definition, and I'm having air quotes here, of holistic health, in my air quotes, of what they're defining it to be. So basically, holistic health is an approach to life that considers multidimensional aspects of wellness, which is what Tina does, wellness, right? So I'm going to repeat that because Tina lit up. And J-Rock is like, say that one more time.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm kidding. Yeah.
Holistic health is an approach to life that considers multidimensional aspects of wellness. It encourages individuals to recognize the whole person, right, Tina?
Yes.
That means physical, mental, emotional, social, intellectual, and spiritual. Everything we covered. The individual is an active participant in their health decisions and healing processes. So what works for Tina might not work for J-Rock and might not work for Xiomara, right? But the person who's treating us should know that because they're operating from a holistic perspective and they shouldn't try to give me what they gave Tina or what they gave J-Rock.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
To fix a thing. They should kind of be open-minded about what might not work and what would work. So the individual is an active participant in the healing process. That includes wellness-oriented lifestyle choices. I think that's a real important one because in America, I'm just going to leave it at that. In America, our lifestyle choices sometimes, okay. Holistic approaches to health are derived from ancient healing traditions that help. I'm going to say that again for the people in the back. Holistic approaches to health are derived from ancient healing traditions that help to achieve higher levels of wellness and prevent disease, Tina. Right? Tina's clapping. Air claps. Air claps. Yes. Prevent disease, which is not what we do here, right? We wait until there's disease and then we go in and do treatment. And what are we all about, J-Rock? Prevention and intervention.
Exactly.
Right? So that's what the holistic thing is really, These approaches include use of traditional medical systems. So don't come at me saying that I am not that I'm like dogging the medical system, because I'm not. I think that they are very important and they play a very important part obviously in healthcare. So traditional medical systems, mind, body, spirit interventions, that's Tina. Right, Tina? Manipulative and body-based approaches. So we were talking about the chiropractors. We were talking about acupuncture. Massage is a great one. Somatic therapy. Acupressure. All of those things are just amazing, right? Biological-based therapies and energy therapies, which you, again, talk about now. She lit up.
I can talk about that.
So energy therapies are things like Reiki and stuff that I'm going to let her talk about, because that is out of my scope of expertise.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that. So the last thing I'm going to say before we talk about that is the question of, is holistic health the same as holistic mental health? Confusing question, isn't it? Is holistic health the same as holistic? In my brain, it is, because they're all health, right? And they're connected.
Right.
But the world likes to separate things and put them into pretty little boxes.
Well, we need to stop doing that.
Yeah, we need to stop doing that. The main difference between the two is that a holistic approach seeks to address the root cause of the disorders themselves, rather than just managing the symptoms of the illness. Yes. I am going to repeat that. The main difference between the two is that a holistic approach seeks to address the root cause of the disorders themselves, rather than just managing the symptoms of the illness. So like anger, anxiety, depression. So sometimes it's clinical, but a lot of the times these are symptoms of something that we need to get to the root of. Like, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
It often come along with mental and emotional struggle, right? And that's, I think, what gets confusing. So holistic mental health is an approach that considers multidimensional aspects of wellness. That's what I do, right? I encourage people, my clients, to recognize themselves as a whole person. So don't come to me and say, can you help my psychological health? And then just ignore everything else, like your physical and your spiritual and everything else, because you're going to be back. I'm going to see you again, right? So it encourages them to recognize the whole person, their physical, their mental, their emotional, their social, which is a big one, intellectual, again, a big one, and spiritual. And that's all I have to say about it. Did you hear a difference in any of those?
No, not really, no.
Right? Isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So now
everything is connected. You can't separate any of this.
You really can't. I think sometimes one needs a little bit more attention than the other. But there's this thing that they do at the VA called whole health wellness or something, and it's this big circle where they have everything in your life that you need to be taken care of in order to have whole health, and all of these things is what they touch on. They want to make sure you're dealing with the whole health, and we'll do a podcast on that one day, so we can talk. All right, so you want to talk about Reiki?
Yeah.
And tell us what it is and how it works and all that.
Reiki is a Japanese word. It means universal life force. And so what Reiki practitioners do is we connect mindfully to that universal life force, which, by the way, we're all connected because we're all alive in a body. But we are conscious and purposeful about that energy, and we pull that energy into our bodies, and it goes out our hands into the person we're working on.
So when you say I come to you and I want to have a Reiki session, right? And I'm so stressed and tensed out and just all New York up in there, right? And I'm, oh my God, help me. And I say, do your thing. What happens? What does that look like? What are you going to do?
Okay, so I have a table, like a massage table, and you're clothed, you lay down on the table. I put on some beautiful healing music, relaxing music. Before you get on that table, I sit down with you and figure out, I talk to you because I want to know holistically what's going on with you. Or you have any pain in the body? Are you struggling with anything right now? But the beauty of Reiki is it's extremely relaxing. I always tell people it's like I massaged you, but I did not massage you. It's just gentle hand placements around the body. And in fact, I don't even have to touch you. I can just hover my hands. So they've done studies on Reiki where they've studied the practitioner and the recipient. And the practitioner goes into an alpha brainwave state.
Wow.
They've shown this in studies.
Yeah.
And so when the practitioner gets into that state, the recipient gets into that state.
Okay.
Everybody is in a relaxed meditative state. So what happens when you're relaxed? The pain goes away.
Yeah.
So you see that word so you see why it's so parallel to mental health. So our language in saying exactly what you just said would be when your central nervous system is regulated and you get around someone whose central nervous system is not regulated, and you naturally do the things that you're doing as a regulated person, that person tends to co-regulate with you. You see how the language is different, but we're saying the same shit?
The same thing, yeah. Same thing.
It's also called entrainment. And so this is how much we affect each other, and we may not realize it. I have people who come to me and say, I feel loved when I'm around you.
Yeah.
And that is such a gift.
That is a gift.
Give.
Yeah, it is a gift. And it's a gift because it's genuine and it's not like you are forcing yourself, right? J-Rock, she's not forcing herself.
No,
she just has that natural energy about her that's just a healing, calm sort of...
Warming, all of that.
Yeah. And that is how you co-regulate somebody else without even knowing that you're doing it.
You're welcome.
There you go.
See what I'm saying? So it's all, we can all use different languages and we can all have different science behind it and we can all practice it. All the practitioners are practicing the same thing with different methodology. Like we all have a different method in which we're delivering the healing service. But ultimately, what we want to see is an individual who is regulated, who is calm, who is peaceful, who is not in pain, who is not emotionally distressed, right? And who is physically healthy.
And also someone who can hold space and help you feel safe. That is huge.
That is really big. So thank you for explaining that, because I would not have. I know what it is because I've seen it, I've been around it, I've had it, and I love it. And it's part of what the VA, even now, because it's science-based, they allow us to have it. But I cannot explain it in a way that made sense unless I use psychobabble like I just did. So counseling and therapies that address whole persons, and compared to the whole spiritual approach that Tina is talking about here, which is also science-based in what she and the methods that she uses. So counseling and therapy usually addresses the mental health challenges or diagnosis, right? So even when you're starting therapy, it doesn't necessarily require a specific diagnosis. And that is a big, huge part of holistic mental health, right? Because typically what happens is, and I used to hate this, when you work in agencies or you work in group practices or anything like that, and people who have insurance, which is why I don't take insurance right now, that's one of the many reasons, is that you have to give the person a diagnosis day one in order for the insurance company to agree to pay for their treatment. So, how in the hell on day one, little J-Rock comes in and says, hey man, I'm not sleeping, I'm not eating, I'm irritable, I have no energy, I feel worthless, all of the signs of depression. And he's talking to me about that, and we're going through the whole thing. In order for his insurance to cover what he's doing, I have to now write up a DSM-5 diagnostic with the diagnostic code that the insurance company will accept and say, okay, and then how many treatment sessions you get for that, which is ridiculous, right? Because it might take 5 for you. It usually takes, at least 8 weeks, right? But they might say 3 for you, 5 sessions for you. And then you have to fight them out. That's nonsense. I just don't think. especially when you don't have to diagnose them, because maybe I want to send them to Tina and see if there's some other issue that's beyond me, or I want to send them to I have a primary care doctor that I send a lot of my clients to, and then they find out, they're on the wrong medicine, they're deficient in this, or there's sleep issues that have to do with apnea and has nothing to do with like you have to wear a little thing, a whole lot of things. I'd rather get all of those things knocked out before I diagnose you. Yeah. So anyway, but that's not the conventional way that it's done. Most people will diagnose you in order to have a treatment plan and do all that. I don't do that. So it focuses on emotional health, exploring symptoms and treatments, and developing coping skills that facilitate progress. That's what counseling and therapy does. Holistic mental health clinicians, they focus on the person's physical, like we said. They also use a lot of expressive arts, which we haven't talked about. And that's dance, which when you dance, how do you feel? Do you ever dance in the kitchen?
Frank dancing in the kitchen.
Gotcha.
Oh my God. Me and my two nieces, that's what we do in the kitchen when we're alone or when we're not alone. We just dance. And it just if you want, and then the dogs, start moving around with you and playing. It just instantly shifts you, it shifts you. So expressive arts like dance, art, music, to work with people. And there are art therapists, and that exists for a reason. There's a reason for that. Mindfulness practices, meditation, like we talked about, relaxation techniques are a big one. I do a lot of that with my clients, a lot of breathing exercises, a lot of relaxation techniques, because the science is there and it just works. It just works. And then the physical approaches like yoga and Tai Chi. And that's the last word I have about that. So I think that did we cover mostly everything that we want? Do you have any questions, J-Rock? You learned about the period.
I'm learning so much right now. It's and one thing that you did bring up that's so true when we were referring about the music, like relaxing music, so. Before I go to sleep, I would turn on lo-fi. Lo-fi is like now become one of the biggest genres that's not talked about. Like if you turn on lo-fi chill music, it has like maybe 50 million downloads, subscribers, because of that. I feel because it's so relaxing and calm that it's like people either study with it or go to sleep or just chill with it. So when you bring that up, I'm like, I do that every night. Like I can't go to sleep unless I have some lo-fi music, and it just knocks me right on out. So
I have a Reiki playlist.
Oh, okay.
I'm picky about my music.
Which maybe she'll share with us someday.
I'll share with you if you're on Spotify.
Yeah.
So when I was traveling overseas last spring, it's hard to sleep on the plane. So I was on a very long flight. It was like 11 hours. And I put my Reiki playlist on.
Oh,
I slept like a baby.
Beauty.
Yep.
I'm telling you, people, I hope everyone has learned something new. I hope that everybody, all of the listeners, are having an open mind about this, because I know that individuals like Tina, who are credentialed and work really hard and have a lot of success in what they do, often by those of us who have a science evidence-based education behind what we do, tend to minimize it or tend to say, they're so woo-woo and they're so what. I hate when they say that. That's so disrespectful.
Yeah.
But they do say that. You know that, right? Yeah. You don't care.
Okay.
She don't care. That's because she's so chill.
I don't care.
I'm the one that cares and it's like, shut the hell up. You know what I mean?
We don't really have a vocabulary to describe this adequately.
Yeah.
And, it's very, very hard.
I agree. Yeah, you're right. Well, so I feel like whatever works for you that makes you get centered and balanced and happy and well. That does not mean maladaptive stuff like overeating, oversexing, violence, over Facebooking, over TikToking, any of that junk stuff. That all it does is it gives you a temporary adrenaline hit for you to feel okay for that minute. Yeah. And then you go back and 3 hours later you need another hit because that's not really real. That's not real. That's just messing with your waves, okay? Just stay away from that. Go back to the things that are sustainable, are healthy, are adaptive, feel good. You don't need to abuse in order to get the benefits from, right? That's why we abuse alcohol, because you have to keep chasing it. But these things, you don't really abuse them. You use them in moderation as needed, and you never feel the need to have to, drive yourself crazy trying to get lo-fi, or else you're never going to be good. Like you can find that other thing that's going to work. Yep. Keep yourself open to that, but then I will also do the disclosure that that's very necessary because, people hear things and then sometimes, they go, always listen to, go to your doctor if you need to go to your doctor, go to your spiritual person if you need to go to your spiritual person, go to your mental health clinician if that's where you need to go. But don't not do your care that you already have in place or that you do need to do because you hear us talking about alternatives and different ways that are out there and then you suddenly change, course without, you have to be very careful and mindful and always have the professional person who knows what they're doing by your side, looking out for your wellness. We have a whole do no harm policy for a reason, right? Like we don't want to see you hurt. So make sure that you take care of yourself that way. And then other than that, thank you for listening. Thank you, Tina, for being my first special guest.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you have fun. Didn't I tell you that we kind of goof off here a lot?
Yeah.
So I'm going to have all of Tina's, I'm going to have her website, her Instagram, her Facebook page. I'm going to include the book info in there. And then I'm going to have some resources and the reference to just about everything that we talked about tonight on the show notes. And that's it, right?
That's right.
All right, guys. All right. You guys have a good night and take care of your mental health. Thanks for listening to the X Podcast with me, Xiomara Sosa, clinical mental health counselor, licensed professional counselor here in South Carolina. We hope you enjoy our real conversations about all things related to mental health. You can check out our show notes for reference, resources, and other show-related information. If you found value in our conversation, we encourage you to join us weekly as we discuss different mental health topics. You can head over to the X Podcast website at www.studiotalkpodcast.net and send us a message from there, as well as sign up for our newsletter. Our email address is studiotalkmentalhealth@gmail.com. You can also subscribe to our podcast and leave us a rating and review at blueberry.com/studiotalkmentalhealth. And send us a text or call us at area code 843-695-9974. Please recommend our podcast to your friends, colleagues, family, and networks. Thanks for supporting us.